Today I'm going to be talking about a static Today I'm going to be talking about designing a static squid arm. Our goals for the day are to model a squid tentacle, to learn about polygonal modeling, and the second part of class we're going to learn how to animate a squid tentacle. I'll post my finished model online at http://tinyurl.com/blendcamp. The first thing that we're going to do is start a new scene by pressing Ctrl N Enter. Here we have a Blender scene. I'm going to press Ctrl N and hit Enter in order to create the new scene. Once we have a new scene, we're going to make sure that we're in the front view with an ortho perspective. If you have a numpad, you press numpad 1 to view it from the front and numpad 5 to get into ortho. My computer doesn't have a numpad, so I'm going to go to View, Front, and View, Ortho. And I can verify that I am in front ortho. Our goal is to shape the cube into part of an arm for an octopus or a squid. We need to change from object mode, where we position objects, into edit mode. There are two ways to change modes from object to edit. The not so good way involves clicking on a combo box at the bottom of the 3D viewport. Down here, there's a combo box. If I click on it, I can select edit mode. And to go back, I can click on it and choose object mode. A better way to go to edit mode is to press the tab key on the keyboard, which will toggle you from edit to object mode. If I hit tab, it switches to edit. If I hit tab again, it switches to object. Object, edit. Object, edit. For this to work, my mouse cursor should be in the 3D viewport. If my mouse cursor is somewhere else, then tab doesn't have the same meaning. It must be here in this 3D view so I can switch from edit to object. Know your mode. You need to pay attention to which mode you're in. Different options are available in edit mode than are available in object mode. You can tell you're in edit mode by looking at the combo box or by looking at your mesh. The mesh will appear differently in edit mode. Often the whole thing would be selected in orange. Again, this is my cube in edit mode. Here it is in object mode. Only the outside is orange in object mode. The whole thing might be tinted in edit mode. Orange means selected. You can press the A key on your keyboard in order to toggle the selection. Here we have a cube with everything selected. If I press the A key, nothing is selected. If I press the A key again, it will toggle the selection. Understand the parts of a mesh. In edit mode, you can see the vertices as squares at the corners of your mesh. The edges are black lines. You can also see the center of your mesh as an orange square with a black outline. And the faces are the regions which are enclosed by a loop of edges. If you look at the bottom of your 3D viewport, you'll notice 3 buttons. They allow you to edit the vertices, edges, or faces in your mesh. Right now, we're editing vertices because the vertex button is down. Here we see the vertex button is down. You can select vertices by right-clicking on the black squares at the corners of the mesh. If I deselect everything and right-click on a vertex, it turns white, and the edges, the portions of the edges that touch the vertex are tinted orange. Of course, Shift and right-click also works to select more than one vertex at a time. The active vertex is white. The other vertices are orange. If you click on a vertex that's already selected, you deselect it. Note I'm pressing Shift while I click in order to select multiple points. You can move vertices the same way you move objects with the G, S, or the R keys. If I select a vertex and I press G, I can move it around. I can use X to limit it to X direction, Y to limit it to the Y direction, and Z to limit it to the Z direction. Escape, because I don't actually want to move it. You can also select multiple vertices with Shift and right mouse button. If you select all the vertices of a face, the face turns orange. So here I've selected one vertex. If I press the Shift key, I can select another vertex, which gets that whole edge. And if I continue around, I get all four faces around a face, all four vertices around a face, and the entire face turns orange. We're going to switch to wireframe mode by pressing the Z key, which is going to allow us to get a better view of what's selected in our mesh. You can also go to wireframe by pressing the shading button on Blender, which is down here next to the edit mode. Again, here's the shading button. If I click it, I can choose wireframe display. I can also press Z on my keypad to switch back and forth between a solid and a wireframe display. So far we've been selecting points, but there are other primitives. It's hard to edit a mesh one point at a time. The Edge button allows you to select an entire edge at once. We can switch from vertex mode to edge mode by pressing the buttons or by pressing Control and Tab keys on our keyboard. If I hit Control Tab, I can pick between vertex, edge, or face mode. I can type 1 or V for vertex, 2 or E for edge, and 3 or F for face. I'm going to do E. I'm now in edge mode, so if I right click, it selects an edge. Again, Control Tab, E for edge mode, and right click to select an edge. If I press Shift, I can select multiple edges. When every edge around a face is selected, so is the face. You can move selected edges to change the shape of the object, and all the vertices will move with it. If I select a single face, and I move it by pressing the G key, I can change the shape of the mesh. The last edit mode is the Face Select mode, which allows you to select entire faces at once. When you go into Face Select mode, you see little black dots in the middle of each face. If you right-click on one of those dots, that face is selected as the active face. And with Shift, you can select multiple faces. You should understand the shading. The selected face is orange, the active face has white stippling, and also the center of the object is an orange dot that you might get confused with the faces because they look similar. So be careful. I'm in the 3D view, and I'm going to press Control Tab and F to go into face mode. I see the center of my object is orange, and I see black dots for each face. If I right-click on the dot, I can select a face. By pressing the Shift key, I can select multiple faces. The center of the object is an orange circle. The center of the face is an orange dot without an outline. They look very similar, so don't get confused about which is which. Extruding a face allows you to pull it out in order to create more complex objects. The E key extrudes selected faces and lets you move the extruded face to a new position. You can extrude by finding the Extrude button on the toolbar on the left, or by pressing the E key. When you've extruded, you can constrain the motion to a specific axis, such as X, Y, or Z, and move a particular amount by pressing a number, and you hit Enter to apply it. Here I'm going to select the top face and press the E key, which begins an extrusion. By default, you're going to extrude in the direction that the face points. By sliding my mouse, the face moves up and down. If I want to move a particular distance, I can type it, for instance, 2. So this has extruded that face 2 in the Z direction. I hit Enter to apply it. I hit Control Z to undo a change, and E to move it. If I hit Escape, it's important to note that I still have extruded, but I didn't move the extruded face. So don't hit Escape once you extrude. If you find that you didn't intend to extrude, move it to a new position and Control Z to undo it. You see these dots on the corners of the edges? That means that I still have an extruded face, so I'm going to hit Control Z again. If you make a mistake here with the topology, it can be very difficult to fix. So be careful with your extrudes. E, move it up 2 units, hit Enter. We're going to be building a squid arm by extruding the top of the cube 7 or more times in order to make a bunch of segments to a squid arm. The process goes like this. I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to go to the front view. I'm going to type E2, Enter, to extrude that cube up 1 unit. E2, Enter, E2, Enter, E2, Enter. How many do I have? 6. E2, Enter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is the goal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So one more time, E2, Enter. So here I have a set of segments to a squid tentacle. You need multiple segments in order to be able to bend a thing. We're going to be having a sucker come out of each one of these segments. I want the squid tentacle to end in a point. So I'm going to merge the 4 vertices at the very top I'm going to collapse them into one point in the middle. In Blender, Alt-M merges points. I already have the 4 points at the top selected, so I'm going to press Alt-M to merge the points, and I'm going to merge them at their center. This creates a sort of a square pyramid at the top of my tentacle, right here. So we're going to make the tentacle look smooth and rounded by using something called a subdivision surface. We're going to go to the Modifiers panel the one that looks like a wrench, and we're going to add a modifier that smooths it out. The modifier that we're going to add is called a subdivision surface. A subdivision surface is going to create a smoother version of our mesh inside of the original polygonal mesh, which is going to act like a cage. When we move the outer mesh, the inner smoother mesh is going to follow it. Let's see this happen. So currently, our mesh doesn't look like a natural object. It looks like the Washington Monument or an obelisk. On the right-hand side, I'm selecting the wrench tool, and I'm going to hit Add Modifier, Subdivision Surface. When I did that, inside of this obelisk, it created a rounded wireframe. In order to view that as a solid surface, I'm going to press the Z key. So now I can see the solid, smoothed out tentacle, but it's still got large faces. I can increase the number of subdivisions that I see when I'm previewing it here in the View tab. If I increase it to 2, then each one of my original polygons, or edges, is split into 2 parts. If I increase it to 3, I've smoothed the mesh out quite a bit. This method of generating smooth meshes was invented by Catmull. I think he's the CEO of Pixar, and Clark. I want my render subdivisions to match my preview so that I can predict what will happen when I render it. Again, you can increase the subdivisions in order to make the inner surface look smoother, but don't go more than 4 or your system might slow down because there are so many faces on the inner surface. If you edit a point in the cage, in the outer mesh, the inner surface will move as well. Let's take the point at the tip and move it up a few units. So I'm going to enter Point Select Mode, select that point at the tip, it should already be selected, and I'm going to move it in the Z direction by 3 units in order to create a more pointed tip. Again, if I undo, I did G, Z, 3 to move it up. If we look at the bottom of our tentacle, it's kind of rounded. This is where the tentacle would attach to the octopus's body. I want to delete this face so that a hole remains. In order to do that, when you make a mistake, press Ctrl Z. I'm going to move the view around. So I'm sliding the view up with the middle mouse button, and I'm rolling up so I can see the bottom. I'm going to go to Face Select Mode and select the face that's at the bottom of the tentacle. I'm going to press the X key on my keyboard, and I have different things I could delete. I want to make sure that I delete only the face and not the edges and the vertices at the corners of it. When I delete the face, I can see now that the surface is open where that face used to be. We're going to add suckers to the arm by selecting a face on the right-hand side of the arm and extruding it out by 1 unit. Then we're going to take that selected face and extrude it again and pull it back into the squid. the effect will be a sharp tentacle. We can repeat this 4 more times to create the rest of the tentacles, but in the next slide I'll show you a shortcut. Let's start with the first tentacle. So I want to select a face on the positive X side. So I'm going to look at it from the front view. And I want to select look at it from the front view. I'm using an OS X computer, and the swipe gesture sometimes gets misinterpreted. It thinks I'm trying to spin the object. Go back to view, front. So this is the face that I want to select. So I select that face, and I press E to extrude, and I want to move it 1 unit, and I hit Enter to apply it. Now I want to move it back -1 unit, back into the tentacle. So I type E again, I type -1 in order to move it back, and I hit Enter to apply it. And the effect is of a tentacle on the squid. Instead of repeating this more times, I'm going to take a shortcut. You can use the Alt-E key to give yourself some extra options when you extrude multiple faces. I'm going to select all of the remaining faces and press Alt-E, and I'm going to choose the individual faces option, I, and I'm going to extrude them all once, all 1 unit. Then I'm going to just press the ordinary E key and move them 1 unit back. So here I select this face and press Shift to select 4 more. I press Alt-E to extrude faces, and I want to choose individual faces, so I can press the I button. I want to move them 1 unit out, and then I hit Enter to apply it. I want to extrude those faces again, 1 unit back, so -1, and I hit Enter to apply it, and I have all of my tentacles. Again, zooming out, this is what we have at this point. The tip of a squid tentacle with 4 suckers. We're going to extend the arm down. So right now the tentacle isn't very long. I'm going to select the 4 edges around the bottom of the tentacle, and then when I extrude with those edges selected, it will add new segments to the bottom of the tentacle while keeping that face open. Let me show you what that looks like. So I want to go into edge select mode. I can press this button or Control Tab E. I want to arrange my view so that I can see the edges clearly. I right-click on the first one and shift right-click to select the remaining 4. I missed. Notice that I missed and I selected the wrong edge. Be careful about that. In order to deselect it, I shift and click again. Now I make sure I've got only the edges I want selected, and I can hit E to escape. So this time when I extrude, I need to make sure that it goes in the Z direction. So I'm going to press Control Z to undo that extrusion. It's important that you undo it. Now I'm going to press EZ2. That was the wrong way. I want to go -2 to move down and hit Enter. EZ -2, Enter. You can also do this interactively by hitting E and then just moving the mouse, pressing the Z key to constrain yourself to that direction. You don't need to move exactly 2 units each time, but I like to have that control, so I'm going to hit 2, minus, enter. EZ minus 2, enter. How long you make your tentacle is entirely up to you. I'm going to do it a few more times. And I'm happy with this length. So our tentacle right now has gotten very big, and I want to keep this tentacle about, so that the cage, the outer wireframe, is about 6 units tall. So I'm going to look at this from the front view, select everything, and scale it by eye until it looks like it's approximately 6 units tall. So here I see the mesh. The A key would deselect, and then the A key again selects everything. If I hit View, Front, or press numpad 1, I can see this grid. I want the entire squid to be 6 units tall, and I want it to have the bottom be right at this red line. So I'm going to type in Z to move this up until the bottom is about where I want it. And I'm going to press S and scale it all down to be 6 units. It's scaling away from the bottom, so I'm going to put the escape key. Down here I can choose a pivot for when I scale, and I'm going to choose to scale around the 3D cursor and press Shift-C to put the cursor at the bottom, and then scale it until it's about 6 units tall. Again, you can use any method that works, but 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 4, 5, 6. So that's how tall I want it to be. Right around there is 6 units tall. So that's about the same point your light is on your default scene. I'm going to go back and change my pivot to what it was before, which was median point, and go back to the slides. So when we look at our mesh right now, you'll notice that you can see every individual face with a little edge, a discontinuity in the shading in between it. In order to get rid of these discontinuities in shading, we're going to hit the shading button and choose to make it smooth. So over here on the left-hand side is your tools. The T key hides or shows the tools. We're looking for the tool called shading, which on yours might be in a different location. But you'll see an option that says smooth. And when you zoom in, when things are smooth, you see no discontinuities anymore. Again, flat is how it started, smooth, and you can't see the discontinuities anymore. If you're using a different version of Blender, the button will be in a slightly different location. You can also hit W, shade smooth. The W key brings up a special menu, and you can shade it as smooth. So right now, our squid tentacle is smooth, but it looks very unnatural because it's so straight. At this point, I want you guys each to edit the points. by pushing and pulling points or edges in order to give the squid a natural feeling, but I want you to keep it pointed straight up the z-axis. I'm going to do the same thing. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to select by pressing the Alt key. When I select an edge, it selects an entire ring of edges. So I'm going to select a ring and scale it a little bit. Again, I'm pressing the Alt key and selecting a ring and scaling it in or out a little bit. Alt, select the ring, scale it. Alt, select the ring, scale it up or down. Alt, select a ring, scale it up or down, whatever I think looks good. So that has a bit more of a natural feel. I can also do that trick to the suckers. Until it looks like something that wasn't built by a machine. At this point in time, I recommend you all save your work so you don't lose anything. So go to File, either Save or Save As, and put it on your desktop for now so we can find it, and give it a name. So in my case, I'll call it Femiani Squid Arm.blend. In order to actually save it, I press the Save as Blender File button on the top right, and it's saved. So now we're going to add some additional detail to the tip of the tentacle so that when we animate it, the tip has more flexibility to act like a finger. We're going to add a few loops to the tip of the tentacle. Right now, the tip of the tentacle it has just a few straight edges, so you can't bend an edge. In order to bend the edge, we're going to need to add new rings around it that we can manipulate. We're going to select the 4 edges that meet at the tip. We're going to press the W key to bring up a special menu, and we're going to subdivide those edges, which will split each edge in half. So each edge gets a new point right in the middle, and then those points are connected to form a new ring. Now we have the 4 edges at the tip, plus these 4 new edges selected, and we're going to split those. So these 4 edges create that ring, and these 4 edges will create that ring, and we'll end up with 3 new rings in our mesh. So here's our mesh. If I look at it from another view, I can see those edges at the tip. I'm going to make sure I'm in edge mode, and right-click on the first one and shift right-click to get the remaining ones. Now if you can't select through the mesh, there's a button at the bottom that looks like this. If you press it, you'll be able to select the edges that are in the back of the mesh as well. So this button allows you to select right through the visible part of the mesh and select the edges on the back. You might not want that Another thing I could have done was simply to rotate around until I could see it. Or I could have viewed it from the top. So I see I have those 4 selected. And now I type in W and subdivide, or S. And it adds a new ring. I need to make sure that these edges are not selected, so I'm going to shift and right click to deselect each of those. Then I type W, S again. You see that I made a mistake? I'm going to press Ctrl Z and make sure that these are deselected. And W, S again to subdivide. When this is done, I can press Control, or I can deselect everything and press Alt and click to give this a natural feel again. I'm going to fatten that out by selecting those 2 side edges and scaling up. You can make yours look however you want it to. One thing that's not on these slides that I want you to remember is that you need to deselect the edges in the middle. So we've made a squid tentacle. If you have time, try to make an arm with 2 rows of tentacles instead of 1, or try to figure out how to add a texture. Next, I'll show you how to add bones and animate a squid.